Thank you so much, and a very warm welcome to the audience. I know it is a session just before lunch. In fact, in the another event, I was just holding a session just after the lunch. So I know both the sessions are very crucial because in both the sessions you have to hold the attention. One is after lunch and one is before lunch. So, but I'm happy to have, and I have a very good partner with me, Swapna, to have this conversation and hold you all indulged and engaged in this conversation. So thank you. I'm Tanu, and I'm the founder and CEO of Human Factor. And it's a very interesting topic that we are talking. And we have been hearing, since morning we had the CEO panel, and then we had HR 2.0, and very interesting questions that we heard. And it was a great learning for me as well, and I'm sure with Swapna as well. And so taking it on from there, coming from our own individual experiences, I would, while we have been introduced, I would still like Swapna to talk a little more about her experience, her journey as an HR professional. One, for all of us to understand, and then that is where we want to start the conversation from.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Tanu. Very delighted to be sharing this space with you. So, if I have to introduce myself in just few words, I would say I am a student of active leadership and someone who wants to reimagine myself through all the experiences that you go through, not just in your life, but also in your professional space. So, my professional intro, I've been with Novartis now for more than 13 years. A big part of it has been in India, but I also got an opportunity to work in other countries like Malaysia and Czech Republic. And prior to that, I was again predominantly in HR, in ITES sector. And like I said, someone who's passionate about reimagining myself. And I also work for an organization where we have worked hard to be really instilling a curiosity into your DNA, not just of the organization, of the people. So, what better an opportunity would I have to really be talking about upskilling, onboarding, and reskilling opportunities?
Thank you. That's great. And so, coming from a very diverse background, multi sector and multi geography, what is, I would like you to talk about and share with our audience in terms of what has been your experience? How have your onboarding, approach has changed? And typically, we talked about uncertain times, and we've all experienced COVID. So now we differentiate, time saying pre-COVID, post-COVID. So I will use that same terminology and ask you, how do you see a difference? What were the onboarding approaches that worked well in the pre-COVID versus post-COVID?
Sure, thank you. So, first of all, maybe let's define what onboarding is in this context. For me, I want to slightly move away from onboarding new hires, especially through, pre-COVID, post-COVID, because I think as organizations and HR professionals, we have spoken enough of that. So because for me, onboarding is also about how do you onboard a new skill, how do you onboard a new behavior and things like that, right? So when COVID happened, I think if there's any one process that we had to jump into automate and digitalize, that was clearly onboarding. Initially, I'd started as a survival, so to say. But then at some point, we started to really understand the benefits out of it because the previous leaders also have spoken quite a bit that we are now moving into a world of hyper personalization. We are moving into a world of multi-generational workforce. So what I want is probably not you want and vice versa. So at some point, we have kind of understood the fact that this is not just a survival, but I think there are enough opportunities for us to be digitalizing, onboarding, and bringing technology into the place. And organizations, I'm sure, have also brought in a lot of efficiencies, productivity, and all that. Now, in Novartis, and just a 30-second pitch so you understand the landscape of Novartis, we are a pharma organization, close to 80K people globally, with 8K folks here in India. which means we are constantly having influx of people. So then how do you ensure your onboarding skills and technologies to this group? And connecting it back to COVID, one of the real time problems we have had was how do you ensure the sense of purpose and pride is not lost? Because we are in the business of making medicines. The fact that I'm working in a bedroom in a corner of my house shouldn't, over a period of time, eliminate me from the sense of pride and the sense of purpose, right? So, a couple of initiatives that we have done was on lines of virtual tours for labs, for example, or virtual tours for Sandoz labs. We have used virtual reality as a technology because this is also a space that needs to be really controlled. I cannot have a newcomer getting into a production site, Tanu, and say, okay, now let me try something here out. It's a very controlled environment. So these are some of the technologies that we have used big time. Now, just talking about a couple of insights, because I'm sure all of you have enough of these technologies in all our organizations. I think the time is not sufficient to talk about it. But a couple of clear insights about onboarding. One, I think it's intentional to define what you want to keep it humane and what you want to talk about technology. I think that's really important. Two, it's not really a lift and shift. For example, I've attended a training program at the cusp of COVID, which was supposed to be a 3-day workshop, completely face to face with case studies, with group discussions, and all that. And then COVID happened, and then we said, okay, now how do we do it? We completely transformed the way the leadership course looked at. We had actually had an opportunity to interact with patients, healthcare professionals sitting somewhere in Brazil, and we had to give solutions to a real time health challenge. So, the point I'm trying to drive is when you automate, you need to have a purpose behind it, a story and a reason behind it, and not really automate for the sake of it. And then also, if you digitalize, somewhere it's important to really understand as an organization, do you have that entire ecosystem to be facilitating, because lift and shift doesn't work. So, yeah.
It's great to hear, but I'm very, fond of this question that I normally ask. What is that some of the approaches you abandoned because of the shift in not only the pre-COVID, post-COVID, but technology adoption as well? So do you see that there you had to do away with certain approaches we were not working well and adopt? Obviously, you've talked about adoption of approaches, but just maybe one instance or two, if you feel there was anything that you had to do away with.
Absolutely. I think we have clearly moved away from one size fits all approach in everything that we do to really a hyper personalization mode. And sitting here since morning, how many times have we spoken about the Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z? And it's not really a war or a competition, so to say. It's about how are we all together coming into this system and operating. So, how do you personalize? For example, in India, we run a couple of leadership programs. Now, depending on which cohort of your leadership journey you are in, there are customized programs. Are you an entry level people manager? Are you someone who has 10 years of experience? Are you a woman leader? Are you getting groomed to be in the top 50 or your succession planning of the organization? Now, you tell me which part of leadership are you talking about? I tell you the name of the program. 5 years back, I would have said I have just 1 or 2 training programs or leadership programs, so to say. So that kinds of probably sums it up.
Great, thank you so much.
I'm very, very curious to listen from you, Tanu, and I'm sure it'll be very enriching for the audience. You are someone who've moved pretty seamlessly through working for corporates to HR consulting, and now you're an entrepreneur, that too in a very, very niche space, right, into the DEI and, on the disability area. So it would be great if you can give us a bit of a view in terms of how the transition has been for you and how did you onboard and integrate your own self? Because I'm sure it's a very big change, right? So if you could talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. And it is also something which is a great learning that has been for me. So, I, having worked for close to 28 years in HR, in all kinds of industries, and have been very fortunate. Somebody asked a question here with the other panelists that, how do you ensure that you gave the experience of moving on to a different role or something that you want to do? I've been very fortunate that the organizations that I have worked in, you know, uh, I have got the opportunity to do what I want to do. And, these are all big organizations. So I second what the panelists said, that if you have a will to do, you will get the opportunity. Yeah. But coming back to, so uh, it is after having worked for 28 years, I decided to go on my own. And I started working as a freelance HR consultant to the MSMEs and SMEs. And it is last year, because of my own experiences with as a caregiver for people with disabilities, that I realized how inaccessible the infrastructures are. And then I got into this area of working and making places accessible for people with disabilities. But the point is not about how I moved from HR to, although in some places still this is part of HR. But the point is how I moved from an employee mindset to an entrepreneur. And I'm sure that so many people of us sitting here have that journey that they have gone through of. And but it had been a very, very a different journey that I experienced uh, after having that employee mindset for 28 years. I had to literally shift to think like an entrepreneur. So while in the organization, we're all taught and we hold roles as business heads and as HR heads, but actually taking a step and moving into that startup phase is something which was a big learning for me. And uh, it has to be, because for me it was unlearning few things and learning. And you have to create an ecosystem around you, a support system which helps you quickly adapt to the changing skills that are required. So it was for me, and I will get to the point of saying that it was more for a reskilling for me completely. And as how I onboarded myself is, there's a lot of push and pull that is required, right? And there is a lot of challenges. So you have to that eagerness to learn. And today, because of technology, Swapna, there is a lot of tools, lot of learning, online learnings that are available. And thanks to the coaching world, right, that there are coaches available to help you onboard yourself quickly onto something that you have been struggling with. And thankfully, I had that ecosystem. And here I would want to share a story with you which is very dear to me, as how you change and you reskill. uh, I was last year sitting with my financial advisor. I am not a finance person, and numbers are very bad with me, although being in HR. So I had to create a business plan, and I was asking him, how do we create? So he was helping me create a business plan for myself. And so he asked me, okay, Tanu, what services do you plan to, provide? And so I told him, disability inclusion is our niche. That is something I want to do. And I want to continue HR consulting. That's very close to my heart. So he said, okay, so disability inclusion, we had that. And he said, okay, so HR consulting, how do you plan to deliver it? So I said, I will do it because I am an expert in this. I will do it. He said, your model grows flat. You will not be scalable. So he said, you have to come out of that employee mindset and get onto the entrepreneur thinking. Think, how will you scale this business? You can't scale this business by delivering yourself. So that was the moment that changed my entire mindset. And I said, okay, I have to think like an entrepreneur. And from there on, the journey anyway went ahead. So I thought, it's a very, something which is very, very important for me. So I thought I'll share it with you. Yeah.
A very inspiring journey, I would say. But what I really liked the most on what you said is how you had to shift your perspectives from being an employee mindset to an employer mindset. So maybe let's shift gears from an employer standpoint. How do you manage these dynamics when you're working with your clients to onboard diverse people into the organization? So, do you have any best practices or any suggestions or guidance that you would like to share with us, Tanu?
So, Swapna, as you also shared, that uh, it is a personalized approach, and you change the approach of how you will onboard, depending upon who are you onboarding, what is it. It is a similar approach, and I will talk about it from two perspectives. One is, being a startup, how I'm onboarding the team that I have, and how I am helping my clients onboard people with disabilities. So it is everywhere, because being a startup, and in the niche area, you don't have people with a similar kind of experience that they're existing. So you have to look and change your approach to say you will not look for the skills, technical skills, I would say, but you will look for the softer skills, because you need people who are agile, people who are, have that learnability in them, people who are adaptable, they are open to doing anything and everything under the sky, right? And yes, and have that balance of seniors, and we have been talking about Gen Zs and all of that. So I love younger population. So so you have to change your approach at what time, what stage as an organization you are at, and what kind of skill set that you need. So somewhere it is important at this stage, focusing more on the softer, because technical skills can be learned about. Secondly, when we talk about onboarding of people with disabilities, we have to give it more time. We have to say that, we handhold our clients, also our people with disabilities, for at least 6 months, to say that they are, are a part of the entire ecosystem. Even for, the organizations who are hiring, it is something that they need to understand. They need to have a support system. And even for people with disabilities who are getting hired, they need an ecosystem to support them to get completely onboarded and, part of the organization. So this is my perspective, yeah, on that. Yeah, great. But also, given I'm very interested to know from you, as an organization, how have you've gone about reskilling and upskilling? What is your perspective on that as an organization, Novartis?
Sure, Tanu. So, to me, um, when you talk about upskilling and reskilling, I think the journey doesn't so much to say begins with HR. It begins a lot with what's happening externally, what's the macro environment, and then what is the impact it has on the business and then on HR. If you look 5 years back, the topics that were there on the CHRO agenda was predominantly hybrid work models. The fight for talent was always there. The future of work, DEI was always like a very big thing on the agenda and so on. Today, if you look at, and I'm not even talking about CEO agenda, I'm talking about the CHRO agenda. We are talking about things like geopolitical situation, and then the intensification of the union's landscape, for example. ESG is starting to have a role to play, in addition to everything that we have had previously. So in such a diverse and a VUCA world, how are you upskilling and reskilling? So to me, that's going to be an interesting conversation. And I'll maybe share a quick example. So when I was in Czech Republic a few years back, we had such a heavy external environment because of very high inflation. We had an internal transformation that was going on. We are still in COVID, so to say. On top of all this, one fine day, the Russia-Ukraine war kicked off. And we have never anticipated that. And some of you spoke about the wars and all, right? So then, what upskilling and reskilling are we talking about? And you can't take 6 months to upskill. It has to be done right then, there. And who has the expertise? I mean, including myself, I've never seen a geopolitical situation. And when you have teams sitting right in front of you, then how are you managing the ecosystem? So to me, trainings or learning is not about those grand programs that we always talk about. your ability as an organization to upskill and reskill on the fly, right? So we had to come up with, because authentic conversations really became the need of the hour. So we said, does it make sense to have peer conversations within the leadership team? Because it was important to demonstrate vulnerability. We did things like reverse mentoring because I was new to the country. I needed help from people who were really facing the reality down there. So some of these initiatives really came handy. So to me, it's the appetite of the organization. I think that to me is one big thing. Now, fast forward, in India now you look at, we all know we are in a very optimistic environment. We are talking about a 1 trillion digital economy, and I'm sure it's only gonna go up. And I always had this myth in my head 5 years back that upskilling and reskilling is all about landing beautiful training programs for people. Only to realize, no. It was about one, building the culture of curiosity in the DNA of the people. Two, it was very important for you to work with leadership. So the previous example that I spoke about, as a leader, what are you doing? And what is the culture of experimentation? Because not necessarily you're gonna succeed every time. And if you don't have all these three components, and I'm sure there might be few more, then irrespective of how much you invest in your upskilling, reskilling strategies, doesn't work, right? So if you look at what are we doing today, I mean, there's everything that you have. We have gamifications, you have personal trainings, you have AI tools, you have face-to-face, but it's about really being intentional about what you really want and having that clarity in terms of where is that you want to really invest and have that upskilling, reskilling strategies for the organization, Tanu.
Absolutely. Understanding the DNA of the organization, and it does change. Yeah. Thank you so much, Swapna, for this beautiful conversation. There's a lot that I learned from it, and I'm sure our audiences would have also learned. Happy to open it to everyone. Any questions that anyone has for any of us?